Hey, welcome. My name is Rachel Smith, and this is the Natural Health Rising podcast. I am a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and the owner of Natural Health Rising, which is my online holistic functional medicine company where I help people who have autoimmune diseases, chronic illnesses, mystery symptoms, and a whole host of other imbalances restore their health by natural means. On this podcast, you're going to hear conversations between myself and other health experts on functional medicine and general holistic health. My goal is to provide you with the tools you need in order to help you rise to your healthiest and happiest self. All right, Michael, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into our conversation today. And first, I always like to start off with asking people, what's your story? Like, how did you get into the business you are in now? Because I know it was a lot different from what you used to do. And now you have Optimize and you're all into biohacking and all these amazing health things. So just take us through that journey a little bit.
Great question. Thanks for asking. It was a long journey how I got here. I was into health and wellness. I wouldn't say I was into health and wellness. I was into fitness when I was younger. I was more into like exercise, working out. I didn't even consider like mental, emotional health, spiritual health. Those were not even terms that I used. So most of it was revolved around weightlifting and those types of things. This was in the 90s. And that's when I initially got really interested in, I would say, anatomy, just understanding basic anatomy because of the bodybuilding kind of world. And then I went into the US military and I spent time there going through the helicopter search and rescue program. And that required a lot of physical fitness as well, a lot of mental toughness as well. But, I didn't really quite know like the science of that at the time. It was more just, we used to call it embracing the suck, which is just like dealing with harsh situations and kind of letting go of that and then just continuing to move forward. And of course, I learned a lot about discipline, and I didn't really understand the science of that and how that can be translated really into health and wellness. So I got a lot of my information early on through just experimentation and taking action. And then later on, I kind of learned and was able to understand it a bit better. But ultimately, what really got me into this world of what I would say is, biohacking is trying to resolve a neurological issue that I had from a neck surgery. So I had a neck injury, and the neck injury called for a surgery, which the surgery is called an anterior cervical. It's where they go in through your throat. And what they do is they cut you open and they move your esophagus over. And what they do is they remove some discs. And then what they do is they fuse your spine with like bone, cadaver parts. And then what they do is they drill a titanium plate into your spine so that it kind of keeps your neck aligned. And I went through that whole process. And that was really difficult actually for me. The surgery was difficult. All of the procedures I got leading up to the surgery was really difficult. And ultimately, the surgery didn't work 100% because after I was injured or after the surgery, I was kind of getting a lot of the similar symptoms, which was pain, inflammation, neurological issues about 8-9 months later. So I was actually recommended for a second surgery. I was supposed to go through that process. They were going to go back in. They were going to fuse above and below where they had fused already. And I just decided that I was going to try a natural approach. So I just started to go down all these rabbit holes of trying to solve different issues that I was having. I made a commitment that I wasn't going to take any more medication, that my commitment was I'm going to find a natural solution to whatever I'm experiencing. So if I'm experiencing pain, I'm going to try to find natural remedies that would help me with pain. If I was experiencing inflammation, I would explore natural remedies that would assist me with inflammation and so on and so forth. And that really got me in the books of understanding my own anatomy, my own physiology, but then ultimately started understanding the power of the mind, because I was introduced to the idea that a lot of pain and inflammation, a lot of issues comes from uh, mental, psychosomatic, and mind body kind of connection. And those were things that I wasn't previously exploring, I didn't take into consideration. So it's ultimately how I found my way into this industry, and doing what I do now with Optimize and teaching Wim Hof method. But mainly it was through my own self exploration.
Okay. What did that discovery process look like? Like where were you going to find these natural remedies, and what were some of the most profound things that you got yourself into?
Well, I was taking a lot of medications at the time that I was injured because I had a lot of pain. And the way like the neck pain would work is that there was days that it was tolerable, and then there was days it would like spike out of control, where it was like really throbbing all the time. And the throbbing pain would like send a lot of energy down my hands and my fingers, and it would stop me from like being able to do stuff. I was like, the working situation was difficult, and, there was no exercise at that time. And so it was really bad. And then it would kind of dissipate. I would kind of mask it with a lot of medication. It would kind of like dissipate for a while, and then it would like rear its head again, and it would come back out, and it would kind of cripple me for like a week or so. So it's weird dance that I did for years with it. And it was driving me nuts. But I met, you just kind of meet some people that like plant seeds in your life, at the different times. And there was one guy that was like planting some seeds in my life. He had introduced me to Eckhart Tolle very early on. And I was like drawn to his work because it was like talking about the power of the mind and being present. And I had a lot of anxiety too, which is something I didn't know I had, but I learned, after exploring what things were. I understood that a lot of symptoms I was experiencing were from anxiety, and I had a lot of sleep issues. So I wasn't getting good quality sleep. I didn't fully understand the importance of that. I come from the military background, which is like you'll sleep when you're dead. That was the mentality. And I didn't put a lot of stock in sleep. So I had a lot of sleep issues. I had anxiety. I had gut issues that I was not also aware of. These were all things that just were not brought up by any of the doctors or specialists that I saw. None of them asked about or cared about any of those things. Um, and I just started to explore different modalities little by little. Some of it was really effective, some of it not so effective, but I really just wanted to gain understanding. The hardest part for me in the beginning was meditation, is something as simple as that sounds, but everything I was reading and everywhere I was going was all about learning how to be with yourself, learning how to calm down your mind, learning how to be present, all of these things, which was something I was not doing much of at all. I think most of my mind was very forward. I was constantly kind of thinking about future moments and maybe predicting or trying to predict or spend too much energy in possible outcomes. So a lot of my mental energy was spent there, and that was just a habit. And I just thought, well, that's just the way my brain works. That's just who I am. But it really wasn't who I was. It was just where I was spending my mental energy. So Eckhart Tolle was an interesting person for me because he started to let me understand the power of the mind, the power of the present moment. If you spend too much time in the future, that'll lead to anxiety. If you spend too much of your mental energy in the past, that can lead to depression. So that really helped me to understand the mental mindset piece. I did some things called Landmark Forum, which I thought were interesting. They were helpful for me in the early stages of me going through some transformation. It helped me to understand that I was telling myself a lot of stories, and then I had to get beyond the stories. It also started to push me in a direction of vulnerability that being able to share your story openly and to show people who you really are openly and really start not caring as much of what people thought of you. That helped me to push me in that direction. So that required me to kind of make some tough phone calls to family members and make some apologies and settle some kind of unresolved issues. I think a lot of us, we have a lot of unresolved issues, and we think that because they're just out there and we're not dealing with them, that they're not affecting us. We just, oh, it's done. I haven't talked to this person in years, but it's like this unresolved energy that just, it's like static energy, and it'll come back to kind of bite you at different times and bother you. But to actually close those loops and to be authentic. So that was really helpful in the beginning stages for me. And then a lot of the physical stuff really came later, a lot of my physical practice, which was, everything from breathing exercises and cold and hot therapies. But mainly in the beginning for me, in my transformation and what I was trying to achieve was mental, emotional, and spiritual. Those were the three big things that I had not spent much time on and that required a lot of my attention. So I got into the spiritual work, which was brand new for me. I wasn't into all that, especially with my background growing up in New York City. I was raised Italian, kind of American Catholic. And so I just kind of let go of a lot of anything that was associated with religion. It didn't mean I didn't believe in God or anything. It just separated me from religious practice, mentally, and then emotionally. Emotionally was something I just never tackled at all. There was a time period when I got out of the military, they diagnosed me with PTSD. And so I had some like one-on-ones with people and like counselors, but they were very traditional, like old school. Well, I wouldn't say old school, but just more like traditional, like psychiatrists. And it didn't connect well with me. So I didn't really resonate with that. So yeah, most of the work that I was doing was really on mental, emotional, and spiritual. And then the spiritual stuff, I got into plant medicine and went down to Brazil and Peru, and I went down all of those rabbit holes, and was basically just a seeker of knowledge.
Mm-hmm. There's so many things I want to get into from what you just said.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Landmark Forum, is that what you said it was called?
Yeah.
Is that like a personal development course?
It was.
Essentially?
Yeah, it was a personal development course, and it was really funny. My buddy tricked me. He says, "Hey, I'm in this program. I'm graduating, this weekend, or I think it was on a Friday or something like that. I would really, really love for you to come to my graduation." And he was my neighbor, and he was a close friend of mine. And I was like, "Well, yeah, of course I'll come." Like especially the way he invited me. The way he invited me was very different than the way he had invited me to other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a guy that, I used to party with. Like we got into a lot of bad stuff together. We were out drinking, partying, like doing really a lot of bad things for our bodies, for our mind, all that stuff. So I had seen him kind of communicate slightly different, and that was odd. I was like, all right. So I rushed home from work. I worked in corporation at the time, and I made sure to rush to this event after work and sit in traffic. And I finally made it there. And when I walked in, I was late, and there was a woman on stage, and she was young. I would say she was, maybe in her 20s or something like that. And she was sharing in front of a very large group of people about very personal things in her life. And I was like, that is terrifying. That like, this woman's crazy. Like, she doesn't even know these people. And she's sharing like these really, vulnerable things about her. So I was really intrigued by that, because I had done a lot of public speaking up to that point, mainly because I did a lot of public speaking in the military. That was kind of a requirement of my job, because we did a lot of training in the helicopter search and rescue. We always trained on rescue swimmer tactics and anti-submarine tactics and combat search and rescue tactics, a lot of public speaking. And then I worked for a university for 14 years, so a ton of public speaking. So I knew how difficult it was just for people to get up there and regurgitate someone else's information, no less something very personal about yourself. So I was intrigued by that. And I decided to go into the course, and I learned, about the course, and, I went through the process, and it helped me to resolve some like obstacles that I had with my father. I had a lot of like this static with my dad.
Hmm.
So that was really important, I think, for my own healing, and to resolve some of those issues with him and make some tough phone calls. And, you know, just a lot of times you just have small talk with people on the surface, but underneath, like there's things that you really want to say or you have to say, but you don't say it because like maybe you don't want to get into it, or you don't know how to say it. So I resolved a lot of good things. So yeah, I had a nice experience in that. I think it was like a 3-day seminar.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, I have quite a few friends who have done stuff like that in the past couple of years. And this year I'm actually doing something similar. I'm between, there's one in Vegas and then there's another one in Utah called Impact Training. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Roviello. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
know some people who went.
yeah. So that's on the books for me this year too. Okay. Well, let's get into a little bit of cold therapy information and hot therapy stuff. So why don't you just tell the listeners, like, what are the benefits of cold therapy and hot therapy?
Got it. Yeah. So there's a lot of different benefits, and you can look at it from multiple angles. There's like the traditional science that we can get into, like what's happening in the physiology of like hot and cold. But what I like to really let people know, like overarching, like there's just a lot more at play when we're doing hot and cold therapy. One, it's been around for thousands of years. So it's like super old technology that our ancestors were well aware of, and they used it. And they didn't have obviously all the modern medicine that we have. So I really enjoy and like the things that have stood the test of time. And hot and cold therapy has stood the test of time, because when you start to explore like native cultures, whether it be from South America, Central America, North America, if you start to explore indigenous cultures of Europe, Africa, Asia, you start to see a lot of the same types of modalities showing up in a lot of these different cultures. So I'll start with that. But mainly, if you really think about it, circulation is so important. It's, we have 100,000 miles of blood vessels and circulatory system, and it's really even hard to fathom how that would actually even fit in our body. But if you ever, what's that show that there's the traveling museum? It's called Body Works, I believe. And Body Works is, this great display of what it looks like underneath the skin. And you can see that there's so much circulatory system going throughout our body. So if we're not working and training that, like there could be a lot of problems. And if you have problems with that, then you have all kinds of problems, because that's the pathway. That's where blood flows. That's how oxygen and red blood cells get to our tissues. That's how nutrients, are getting there. So if you have issues in your circulatory system, then you're going to have health issues, and your cells are not going to be fed, and all those types of things that are occurring. And your body's not going to do a good job of like moving waste and all the inflammation issues that you get into. So I believe that's like a core principle that we should all be working on. And it's one of those things that's just not addressed. If you go to the doctor, they're not really spending a lot of time, like curious about your circulation or what you're doing to improve circulation. It's all very reactive. So it's like, if you have problems, then it's like, all right, they're going to probably prescribe you something to fix that. If you have edema and swelling and all those kinds of issues that can occur.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I love about hot and cold therapy. When you go into hot water or the sauna, things dilate and they open, things open. And then when you go into cold, they constrict. And then you go into hot and they open, they constrict, they hot. So just like your muscles, and you work out your muscles, you're kind of working out your vascular system, which I think is very important. Some of the science to discuss like what happens in cold. When you go into cold, your nervous system goes into fight or flight. So that's why everyone's scared of cold. People are like, I ain't getting into cold water. You know how many times I hear that on a daily basis, when people ask about what I do or the stuff that I'm into. And in the biohacking world, everybody knows about it. But when you talk to people who are not necessarily into that, they think it's really odd. And, why would anybody do that? So there's this term that your listeners might be familiar with, which is hormesis. The what doesn't kill you makes you stronger type of stress. Dave Asprey likes to say that. I really enjoy, the way he kind of makes the term for the word hormesis.
Mm-hmm.
So hormesis is when our body reacts and adapts to stress in a positive way. So essentially giving your body small doses of stress is actually really good for us. So the other thing about cold water is you're actually giving your body a dose of stress by sitting in it. And then what happens is your body has to react to that stress. So your nervous system is going into the sympathetic, which is why your breathing changes. You'll go from breathing normal to breathing, very rapidly and shallow. So it's a indicator that your nervous system is in a sympathetic tone, fight or flight. And when you're in fight or flight, your body produces adrenaline. And the type of adrenaline that it produces is something called norepinephrine. And norepinephrine starts to increase 2, 3, 4-fold. And that has physiological responses. So that affects your mood, that affects your focus, that affects inflammation. Research has shown it blocks or suppresses, is the right term, pro-inflammatory cytokines. So if you have a lot of inflammation in your body, or if you have autoimmune rheumatoid arthritis, if you just may not even be aware of inflammation in your body, if you have aches and pains, it suppresses that. So it gives you kind of a natural relief from your own pharmacy, essentially from an outside pharmacy, compared to an outside pharmacy. There's also metabolic functions that are occurring that are very interesting, because your body temperature is being lowered slightly by sitting in cold water for a few minutes. And your body basically has to get back to homeostasis, back to balance. So there's things that are occurring to do that. There's something called brown fat and brown adipose tissue, which help to convert visceral fat, the stuff that we don't really want much of or lots of it. And it helps to convert that into heat. So you can actually decrease layers of visceral fat by using cold water thermogenesis or cold thermogenesis. There's things called heat shock proteins from saunas and cold shock proteins. There's so much. I mean, saunas, by heating your body on a daily habit, you get to kind of induce a fever. You can help increase body temperature, improve blood circulation, improve blood flow. The frequencies of the infrared saunas that we use at Optimize, they can help to vibrate fat cells and release toxins. So you're helping to detox the body naturally, which is something great that you could do on a daily basis. You can help with blood pressure because of your body having to kind of rebound after the sauna. And ultimately, when you're working with hot and cold modalities, you're working with stress. You're giving your body a dose of stress. You're allowing your body to physiologically react and adapt to that stress. And there's all types of benefits that come physically, mentally, becoming a more mentally resilient. I use it as a spiritual practice, because when I go into cold water for, let's just say, a 3-minute meditation, and I know that sounds odd, like meditating in cold water, but essentially that's what I do. I get into cold water, I close my eyes, I slow my breathing down, and I say mantras and prayers the entire time that I'm in there. So I'm kind of using it also as a spiritual practice. And the reason why I do that in the cold is because I have measured my brain waves, and I noticed that when I'm in cold water, my brain waves are getting out of the high beta range, which is kind of the thinking more analytical kind of mind, and it's coming down into the more alpha and theta waves, which is more introspective. And also it's when your mind is more suggestible. So when your mind is more suggestible, it's like, why not implant like really positive things, and make good use of that time. So for me, it just checks a lot of boxes: physically, mental, spiritual, and emotional. And I do it as a daily routine to keep my mental health, emotional health, and keep me physically strong as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that was a lot.
No, it's all good. I do the exact same thing in the cold is I do mantras and I say, I am safe, I am healthy, I am happy, or whatever else I'm trying to bring into my life.
Nice.
What do you say to yourself? Anything specific?
I know who I am in truth. I know what I am in truth. I know how I serve in truth. I am free. I am free. I am free. I repeat that over and over and over. Sometimes I use traditional prayers. Sometimes I use the word I am love, and I just repeat that word over and over and over and over again. Um, but yeah, sometimes I also will think about maybe what do I need at that moment in my life. And I use a lot of repetition because, mantras are essentially repetition, and it's a way to, one, relax the mind, but two, it's also a way to rewrite programs. So
Right.
it's helping me to kind of rewrite programs. And self-love is, I think, like a very important and necessary program to focus attention on.
Right. Exactly. And this kind of ties back to in the beginning, you were talking about when you learned about the psychosomatic connection. And so how can you explain that for people? Like if I'll give you an example. Someone is sick, right? And they're chronically ill, they have an autoimmune disease or something. Where are they at normally mentally? And how could what does this psychosomatic connection have to do with their health, the way they're thinking? And then like what could they do to transition out of that?
Yeah, that's a tough part. That's a tough one because, we're all looking for like the silver bullet. Like, if I just do this, then I'll feel better. I'll get this. And, we live in that type of environment. So I read a book a long time ago. So the first thing I'm going to recommend is you read a book by Dr. Sarno. It's called The Mind Body Prescription. And he's a medical doctor, and he's old school. And he was the person to really talk a lot about psychosomatic pain. It's how I was introduced to even the concept of it, and even gave me the energy to start exploring like mental, emotional stuff, because that was not something I even considered in my healing at all. It was just physical. Like, I have neck pain. I got a surgery. I have neurological issues. My hands aren't working anymore. I'm getting atrophy in my forearms and my triceps, and I don't understand why. I'm losing strength, and I don't want this to spiral and continue down this road because I'm young. And, if this keeps happening, I'm going to really be in a bad spot soon. They also thought I had multiple sclerosis, which was like super scary because my grandmother had multiple sclerosis, and I kind of knew some of the outcomes and stuff like that. And that was scary for me. So I would say start with that book. But ultimately, there's an interesting connection in how we talk to ourselves and how we think in our thinking patterns, because really everything is about perception. Perception has physiological responses, and conceptually we kind of know that. But I mean, I'll just give you a small example. If you're scared of flying, and maybe you don't fly very often, and you have this fear of flying for whatever reason, wherever that may stem from, your parents or a situation that occurred, or maybe your lack of, being able to have control in a situation where you're flying. I think a lot of times it stems from that personally. But if you get on that plane and you're sitting in your seat, there's a good chance right before takeoff that you're going to have a physiological response. Your heart's going to be beating faster than normal. Your hands and palms might be sweating. And ultimately, you're having a physiological response from a perception of fear. And the person sitting next to you who maybe flies weekly for work is reading their book, and they could care less, and they just are ready to take off and land. So that type of scenario is happening to us all the time in all kinds of situations. And it's all based on our perception, how we perceive our outer environment. And that perception is having an effect on our epigenetics, and it's causing physiological responses. So you have to really start to pay attention to like the self-talk and the things that are unresolved in your life that maybe you think are not causing you any problems, but they're still out there like static. But what are some simple things you can do? Of course, you're going to have to go down these different rabbit holes to try to better understand yourself. I mean, that's, I think, part of life. I think that's a big part of why we're here. Know thyself, right? A lot of the things we're doing as we get older and progress and have kids and have different experiences and live in different parts of the world and move and have health issues and watch people pass on and new people be born and all of the things that life has to bring us. What are we all doing? We're learning how to know thyself more and more and more and more and more until we reach, a time for us to move on. So there's a lot in that. And that's a lifelong journey, and everybody's, on that journey. But what can you do to start to create better habits and improve your mental talk? Or, I would say the mental talk is a big one. You start to develop habits to practice self-love. That's really, really, really important. And it sounds a little cliche. I understand that. But self-love is really committing to things, right, that you say you're going to do and following through. So that could be anything about like the types of food that you're putting in your mouth, like feeding your body good stuff, good nutrients, things that is good. Exercising, like actually committing, like creating a mindset of, it's a non-negotiable for me. I'm going to go and exercise, and I committed to doing this, X amount of times per week, and I'm going to follow through on my commitments and my appointments or whatever that might be. It could be about developing a practice of meditation and following through and sticking to that, or following through on using these mantras, or journaling, or, morning routine or an evening routine. All of these things that require our self-discipline can really help us change our momentum and start moving into being more happy, healthy, resilient, I would say proud, of ourselves, those types of things that like keep you feeling good and push you like in a good direction. But then magnetically, like your frequency starts to change too, because you start to make these changes. You're feeling more vibrant. You're feeling more confident. You're sticking to the things that you committed to, little by little. I do simple things like I wake up and I make my bed. Something as simple as that gives me like one little small win for the day. And then I'm looking at other little things that I'm trying to, have these small wins, these good conversations, all that kind of stuff. But then your body starts to kind of radiate like a different frequency, starts to emit a different frequency, I feel like. And you start to draw in different crowds and different people and different scenarios and different situations and different opportunities. But when your mind is in that low vibration, and you're thinking low thoughts, and you're blaming your life on people, and you're trying to find happiness through materialism and things, and maybe you're making bad choices, and you're surrounding yourself with, say, I hate to use the word toxic people, but, people who just are vibrating maybe just a little bit low at that moment. And you're making bad decisions in dating, right? You're attracting and kind of, we all know what our patterns are. We all have a general idea with dating habits and all that stuff. Then you start to attract more of that. you're bringing in more of that. So you have to start to turn the dial and start to change the frequency in a more positive way through these good repetitions, good protocols, good routines. I think the key is healthy routines are really, really important to change that direction. And one more thing I'd like to add to that is that for me, what I found is balance is so important to me. So physical, meaning I'm exercising, I'm working out, I'm getting my steps in or my hikes in, my cardio and my weightlifting, or whatever the things I like to do to move my body. Just call it movement, because there's a million things that people recommend. Oh no, yoga is better than this and this is better than this. I don't get lost in that. Just move your body and find out what you like to do. Could be dancing. Mentally, like, what am I doing mentally? Am I learning? Am I reading? Do I have new books? Am I watching documentaries? Am I keeping my mind open to absorb new things? Emotionally as well, making sure that emotionally I'm staying balanced, I'm resolving things, and then having a spiritual practice, which that part was like, I was a big fat zero for like most of my life. And that is having a process, and it doesn't have to be tied to any sort of religion, having a process to go inside, find the silence inside of you, and pay attention to what yourself is trying to say. The silence is trying to say. And you can do that through breathing exercises. You can do it through meditation. You can do it through prayers. You can do it through fasting, but at least putting energy into that box and not dismissing it completely. And so I try to really find balance in my life as well, which is not always easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely not easy. I think something that everyone's always striving for. When it comes to being disciplined and incorporating these things, I think sometimes people look at this and they're like, okay, I have to move, I have to do this, I have to do that, and this and that. And then they try it all at once and they fall off. Like, do you have a solid tip for someone to start to incorporate these things? Like, where should they start and how can they build that discipline?
Start by making your bed.
Okay.
Start there. That's the easiest thing you can do. I don't like to set giant lofty goals with even myself or with people that may ask for advice, because when you like try to take on too much, then you may not follow through, and then you'll be disappointed. And when we're disappointed in ourselves, what do? We beat ourselves up. We're usually our worst critics, right? So start off small. It could be something as simple as, I'm going to commit to, let's just say you want to improve your body. That's an easy one, right? A lot of people are kind of want to improve their body. I'm going to commit to going to one class a week. I'm going to commit to, and I'm going to make sure that I attend that class on a weekly basis. And that class might turn into, two times per week, 3 times per week, 4 times per week. If you don't have the self motivation to go to the gym and like put in a good workout, hire people, hire people by going to their class and supporting them, right? They're putting out information that they know about. Go join a class, whatever you're into. It could be a dance class, it could be, an F45 class, an arms theory class. It could be a CrossFit class. There's so many different modalities, but commit to the one class per week. And then that will maybe transition, hopefully, into 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 times a week, and now you're getting into a really good routine where you're really driven to make some serious gains. So that's one way that I would recommend doing. Trying to do everything yourself has always been a problem of mine. So now I'm learning how to rely on experts and not, I don't need to be the expert in everything. If there's somebody who really knows a lot about movement and they've spent a good portion of their life learning about movement, and I'm trying to improve my flexibility in movement, I'm going to go and work with that person and get some advice and just listen and be a student. And being a student's a lot of fun for me. I like being a student. It's like, tell me what I need to do. I'm going to ask you why I'm doing it, but it's all good. I'm learning through the process, and I'm also improving. So yeah, be a good student, and start off small.
Okay. Yeah. Hiring somebody is definitely going to get you to your goal quicker and make you actually stick to it. So same thing for me. I've noticed that. I want to actually close the loop on the hot cold therapy, because I feel like I just want to make sure people know we talked about the benefits and everything, but how can people apply it in their lives? And is there any safety stuff they should watch out for? And what does that look like for them?
Yeah. So hot and cold therapy, you can apply that every day of your life. There's some really good studies that came out of Finland to show that there's a serious decreases in all-cause mortality the more you sauna. So you can actually have an outcome where you can live longer and have kind of a healthier life by using the sauna, which makes sense. Everyone's like, oh, this 30-year study came out and it's so fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating, but it's like kind of common sense. It's so common sense. I mean, you're sitting in a hot box and your body's moving a bunch of blood around in the hot box, and you're opening up all your blood vessels, and everything's dilating when you're in the hot box, and your heartbeat's beating, and you're detoxifying, and you're getting this great kind of cardiovascular workout just from sitting there. Physiologically, your body's having to respond to that. And of course, that's going to improve things. Like, it's a no-brainer. That's like saying, going for a walk every single day of your life is going to, help you to, improve things. Of course it is. We're designed to walk and move. We're not designed to be behind computers and sit in chairs all day long. It's just funny how we have to use research studies to tell us that, things are good. It's like, they've been good for thousands of years, and science is just now telling us that it's officially good. But for thousands of years, people have been doing it. So, but it's great. Science is the language that we use today. So people are really interested in that. But to get back to your question, safety, yeah, if you have serious heart issues, the shock of the cold can be a challenge. So make sure you get with your cardiologist. If you have a pacemaker or anything like that, recent heart surgery, blockage issues, you definitely want to get your cardiologist before you start telling them that you're going to get into 42-degree water. Other than that, it's safe. It's not easy at first because you're training that response where you're going into cold water, your body's going into high sympathetic, which I like to tell people you're basically stepping on the gas pedal, the nervous system. But the beauty in that is you're learning how to train your body for stress. That is so important. My biggest message today is, we're all stressed out. Life is pretty damn stressful. From my perspective, I see things that there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of fear that's out there. We just kind of getting over this 2-year pandemic where there was a lot of fear in the air. There's still a lot of fear in the air. Every time I go outside, I literally see people, walking around with fear on their face. So there's a lot going on. And right now with the economy, that things are changing. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's, normal life stuff, people passing away, right? Just life happens on its own. There's breakups and relationships and, all of these emotional things that we deal with. So how do you get your hands wrapped around stress? How do you, what do you do about it? You can't hide from it. That's the biggest, most important thing I want to tell anyone who's listening to this. You cannot hide from stress. Stress isn't going anywhere. It's going to be around. Jesse Mooring, my business partner, he always likes to say that. So I want to give him credit for that. Stress isn't going anywhere, and you can't hide from stress. But what can you do is you can train for stress. You can train, and you have to be proactive, and you have to train like a warrior every single day, like our ancestors did. They're warriors every day, train for stress. And you train for stress by giving yourself stress. When you exercise, you're giving yourself stress. When you're sitting in a sauna, you're giving yourself stress. When you make the decision to go and sit in that cold water and meditate for 3 minutes, you're giving yourself stress. When you decide to make the decision that I'm not going to eat for 24 hours because I'm going to fast and I'm going to, do what my ancestors did and fast for periods of time because they didn't have refrigerators and they didn't eat 4 times a day and they didn't have those luxuries, I'm giving myself stress. And you're constantly training your body how to react and adapt to stress in a healthy way. And you can tell people who live really comfortably all the time, and they want to eat all the time, and they want to relax all the time, they want to keep things easy all the time, and they want to not rock the boat. And when a stressful situation comes, it knocks them right on their ass and they have a hard time getting up from that. And that's okay too. But you can train for stress, but you have to get in front of it. You have to be proactive. And that's the mentality that I use because I have my own stress in life, just like all of you, but I'm doing my best on a daily basis to train for stress by using this practice of hormesis.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. Train every day like a warrior against stress. It's totally true. Yeah. What about, I think we should just mention maybe for someone who doesn't have access to a cold tub, would you say that cold showers are sufficient to get them through to practice something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. For thousands of years, we didn't have warm showers. I mean, hot water heaters are relatively new, so even most countries, you don't have hot water. So cold showers are great. I mean, we've been using them for a really long time and people didn't have showers, were usually bathing in some sort of cold water of some kind, even in the Amazon. I was in the Amazon jungle like back in 2017 and the Amazon jungle is hot, but guess what? That water was cold. When I woke up in the morning and we had to bathe in these like little rivers and stuff like that, the water was cold. So humanity has been working with cold water for a long time. That's why you get out of that water, you feel good and refreshed and energized. There's something about cold that energizes us, where hot water typically makes us feel relaxed and calm. So hot water kind of winds us down. It's like sitting in a hot tub. You just kind of like calm and relax and you just want to chill. So heat does that to you. And then cold water is very energizing. And so, yeah, cold showers are great. I think it's hard to do cold showers because you kind of have that choice, it's like hot, cold. It's like you wake up in the morning, you're like, I don't know. Do I really want to take a cold shower? No, of course I don't. But what you can do is you could end your shower on cold. So that's a good way to do it. So if you wanted to commit, just like take a normal shower and then at the end, just go cold for like 30 seconds and get into the habit of doing that. So that becomes like kind of muscle memory and routine. And then you start to like feel really good because like you've committed to doing that every day. And then you're like leaving that shower actually feeling really good because of the energy of the cold to the physiological responses that we talked about earlier, but then also because like you're following through on your commitment and you're starting your day off with something difficult. So yeah, I think cold showers can pay a lot of dividends. And then there's this kind of growing trend, which I like to say with cold water therapy. It's like a buzzword now. And so there are obviously places where you can practice. There are units that you can purchase for your home. There's a lot of different options. And if you live pretty much anywhere outside of Arizona, like you have cold showers pretty much all year long. And one of my favorite things to do is to go into nature and find cold water. So it's like I will create a hike where I know that there's going to be some sort of water along the trail. And then I'll hike to an area and do some cold water training and then hike back. And that's a great reset for my everything, from my mental state, from my emotional state, from my physical state, spiritual. I feel really good, especially if like my energy is low and I'm like, I need a shift. Like I need a shift, like work and all the things that creep up on us. I typically will go into nature for like healing of some kind to help make these radical shifts. So get out into nature. That's another thing. Like get out into nature, get your feet in the ground, get into nature, do as our ancestors did. For thousands and thousands of years, we've been in nature, and now we basically don't have to go into nature at all. The way we've structured our lives, and we think that it's not having an effect on us. Well, of course it is. We're having a lot of effects, and there's a reason why we have like a lot of inflammation issues, because we're never in nature and we're never got our paws on the ground. We're never touching the ground. Even people who hike Camelback Mountain and all these local places here in Arizona, you're wearing rubber shoes and sneakers. You're getting a good workout, and it's definitely good for your mental state. And there's lots of pros, but we're always wearing rubber shoes and we're not touching the ground. And that's really, really, really important, and something I'm incorporating more into my life as well.
Yeah, I love grounding. How are you incorporating it? You have a backyard, right? So you could just go out there and
Backyard,
ground.
yeah, in the grass, moist grass. You get the electrons. So electrons are really important that you're getting through your feet. I also wear these shoes called Earth Runners, where they have copper on the bottom, so they keep you grounded when you're hiking. So I hike with them so that I'm getting all the benefits of the grounding, but also the physical exercise and just the mental health that you get from hiking and being in nature. Yeah, and I'm just like if I'm on the computer all day, like if I'm just like cranking out on the computer and I'm answering emails and on the phone and doing stuff on social, when I take my break and I'm like, I need to get the hell away from this computer, I go outside, I put my bare feet in the grass, and I just chill out there and relax there for a little while. And that's a way to, it's almost like plugging in, my body into the outlet. It's just like helping me to recharge
Yeah.
because of the PEMF energies that are coming from the earth. Very subtle, very, very subtle. But they say like 20 minutes is a good cycle to be grounded. So ground for at least 20 minutes. It's a great documentary if you want to learn more about this. It's called Earthing, and you can find it free on YouTube. The gentleman was an electrician for many years, had a lot of health problems, and he learned all about grounding and how rubber sneakers and carpets have created a lot of problems in our society. And rubber sneakers and carpets pretty much came around, I believe, in the 1950s or 1960s. And from that point on, we've pretty much lost our connection with the planet, which makes a lot of sense because everywhere you go, everyone has rubber soles. Whether it be a shoe, whether it be a sneaker, whether it be a sandal, like everything's rubber. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I was actually just going to say that. I thought it was called the Earthing movie, or it's just called
Yes.
Earthing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great documentary. I think it's just like an hour long on YouTube, and super fascinating. And yeah, just really backs up all the science. I think he even talks about various diseases like multiple sclerosis and
Yes.
other autoimmune diseases, and how these people make it a daily practice, and that helps significantly with their inflammation. So definitely worth checking out. And I got the Earth Runners finally this year, a few months back.
Nice.
I love them. They're super comfy too. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I like them too.
yeah. And with all the things that you do for yourself, how are you testing and checking and seeing what's really going on with your health? Do you have a method to checking biomarkers and things like that?
I do. Yeah. I think it's really confusing because there's a lot of stuff out there. So you're trying to
Yeah.
figure out like, all right, what actually works, what doesn't. So biomarkers are one important area for me. So I see for most of my life, I just kind of had like traditional insurance, and I just like, I worked for a company and the company had an insurance plan, and then you go and you get your annual checkup. And like, I just don't subscribe to that anymore personally. And a lot of people are like really trapped in that system. And I think it's a really shitty system. So and I know it's a shitty system because my sister's a nurse and she gets her annual physical from her really good insurance that she likes to brag about. And then when I look at like the things they actually check on her blood test, it's like minimal. It's like they didn't even check her vitamin D the last time. I'm like, you don't even know what your vitamin D is. They didn't even check for that. She's like, no. Like, why does that matter? I'm like, oh, okay. That's interesting. You're a nurse working in a hospital around tons of sick patients, but they don't care if you're deficient in vitamin D or not. So that goes to show you how wonderful and thorough our traditional cycles are, or testing is. So I would recommend against that, and spend a little bit of money because it's your health. And I know you're spending money on other stuff. I know you are. You're buying these iPhones, you're buying stuff. You're probably spending lots of money maybe in the bar. I mean, who knows? There's all kinds of places to spend money on, so there's no shortage of spending money. And then I tell somebody that I spent $200 on a blood test. They think that's absolutely crazy. It's $200, so I do that. I spend a couple $100, and I like to get tested. I like to get tested every quarter, to be honest with you, but twice a year can be good. And maybe even 3 times a year can be really good. So $600 in the course of a year, divide that by 12, it's not so bad. And, so ultimately I like to get a screenshot of what's happening in my body. The things that I like to pay attention to is the vitamin D, my hormones, what's going on with testosterone, what's going on with my thyroid. Is my thyroid working good? Is it underactive, overactive? There's a lot of thyroid problems out there. Most people aren't even aware that they have thyroid issues. I like to pay attention to all of the normal things, of course, blood work, paying, just getting a general idea of what the cholesterols are and different things like that. Also starting to get well versed in how to read some of that. You don't have to be an expert right away, but if you actually invest time and energy into understanding your blood work, I think that's really important. We should all have a general basic understanding. Even if you're not a biohacker, it's your blood work. You should want to know. Don't put all your authority into somebody else. Like, have a conversation where if they tell you something, you can ask why, and you can just have some education and they can explain to you why, or things that you could do. So yeah, I think blood work's important. There's lots of different ways you can go about it. I choose to work with naturopathic doctors because I feel like the tests that they run on me are just more thorough and I can see more information. So that's important to me. There's some really good companies out there that do blood work testing as well. I just got something in the mail that I'm about to submit tomorrow called Biome.
Yeah,
so
Biome.
I met the CEO and founder of that company through a mutual friend. And what I like about Biome is that essentially they're doing gut health testing as well. So I'm very curious about that. And that was, I think, it was relatively inexpensive. So I'm going to give that a try. But mainly what I'm using that company for is because it's going to help me to understand what foods I shouldn't be eating and what foods I should be eating more of. That's really why I'm doing it. So there's a lot of cool services and companies and people like yourself that can help people to interpret these things and put people in the right direction and help people. So I like to do that. The other things is really just checking in with myself mentally. How am I doing? How am I dealing with stress? I have some gadgets, like here I have the Whoop. The Whoop kind of gives me some indication of like what my heart rate variability is. So I can see if, I'm just more stressed on a daily basis and how to start making small little moves to improve that. That's really important to improve that. Also, it helps me to give me some like daily goals of like how much strenuous activity, and also helps to give me some indication. I know they're not like perfect, but some indication of my sleep quality. And guess what? If I'm having day after day after day after day of really shitty sleep quality, which that happens to me when I eat late at night, and I love to eat late at night. That's like my biggest obstacle my entire life. Like I ate late at night. I just like to eat late at night. And it sucks because like you go to South America, or you go to Europe, and everybody eats late at night. It's like super common to go out to dinner at like 10 p.m. at night, And when I was in Brazil, like you walk around at nighttime and like everybody's eating late at night, but it's not really good for you. I think we know that. because your body's digesting while you're trying to sleep. So you're not recharging like you should. So yeah, I get some data from the Whoop. I get data from blood tests, and I would say those are the current. And now I'm going to start including the gut health stuff and start really getting a better understanding of that too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love all the gadgets. They upgraded the Aura Ring now, so that's the new one is a little bit better at doing things during the day too, but that's my favorite piece of technology. I know a lot of people like the Whoop,
What does it do
and
for you during the day now?
they switched it to where you can track your HRV and look at just different markers during the day. I haven't gotten it yet. I still have to order it this week, but it is a lot better than
Nice.
before. Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
that and the Whoop are the two great ones out there. And yeah, with testing, it's like just like you said, with your sister being a nurse and getting the crappy blood work and not even getting the vitamin D. I think having conversations like this is important for people to hear this again and again, that kind of blood work is not very helpful, and that it is your health, and you do just have to invest those dollars in the beginning. And then if you have that data, you're going to be much more likely to save money in the long term, to prevent chronic diseases and to just know what's going on in your body. Like, why do we not know what's going on in our bodies
Yeah.
frequently, right? I think people don't think about it often enough. And that's why the things you're saying with the gut testing, like that's why I do. Everyone gets a gut test, a mineral test, heavy metals, and organic acids right away, and hormones
Awesome.
sometimes, right? It's like we need
Very
this
thorough.
basis. Yeah, we need this basis. And once we know what's going on there, you can go so many different ways and really dial in your health. So I love that you track all of that stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, I really like that. And there's nothing more important than health. It's silly. Like I used to spend my money on so many things. I had all kinds of fast cars and motorcycles and boats, and I had a lot of stuff. I mean, I collected a lot of stuff over the years. There's when I worked in my corporate job, I made really good money. Um, I mean, it didn't provide me much. It gave me like this little spike of like happiness for like a period of time, and then that would like drop off. And then before you know it, it's like I wanted another car or something else. And me, I'd rather invest my money in my health and feeling good. And those types of things are more important to me. Most of the things I enjoy doing these days are relatively inexpensive or free: camping, hiking, going out to restaurants. I enjoy all of those things, social, small group stuff. So that's where I spend a lot of my money. That's important. And of course, it's going to cost you, whether it costs you now or later on in life. It's good to be proactive, invest in your health now. But I also think there's a bad side to the biohacking industry too that I have noticed is I like to call them biochondriacs, right? Instead of a
Yeah.
hypochondriac, biochondriacs. I actually have an article about that I haven't released yet. But you can get too into it, and you can like get away from like just like you can get just like into like trying to calculate everything all the time, and then you like feel this little thing and you're like, oh, what's this little thing? And then you have to you can drive yourself crazy. And then you have to travel everywhere with like 50 pills, and it just can get really nuts too. So I think it's important to have some balance about that, because I'm noticing that in the biohacking community, people actually are training to be more resilient, but they're actually being less resilient because they can't travel without their 50 things. And I'm like, oh, interesting. If I just took that away from you, and if you lost your luggage, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to feel? Are you mentally going to go downhill because you don't have all your stuff? Or can you be resilient, like our ancestors were, and operate with nothing, So some people are really training for resilience, but actually they're creating a lot of crutches, based on all of the gadgets and stuff that they need all the time. So
Yeah.
keep that into consideration too. So
That is
put out that message, biochondriacs. So I think I coined this term. So if this term becomes popular, I want to get credit for it.
okay. Biochondriacs, Michael's term. Well, I think we should wrap up right now, but I always ask for you to give my listeners just one action that they can take this week to help them start to live a healthier, happier life.
Well, if you live local, the first thing I'm going to tell you is to come check out Optimize. We have 2 facilities, one in Arcadia, one in Tempe, and not just to give ourselves our own plug, but we figured out a lot of stuff, right? Like, I went through a lot of rabbit holes for many years to figure out what works and what are like really good non-invasive technologies and practices that you can incorporate into everyday life. And if you try to do, all of this stuff, it can be really difficult, time consuming, and expensive. But we put a place together, a facility where you can come and have access to all of these modalities that you can incorporate in a 1-hour session. So it's really time, effective for, your day, right? Because we're busy, like we're working, we're waking up, we're working, we, are creating some energy and time in our life for like mental health, physical health. So you can incorporate all of these different technologies, hot and cold therapy, infrared saunas, compression therapy, brain taps, meditation devices, red light therapy, and crunch that into a 1-hour time period where you can give yourself that time to recharge, relax, unwind, be with yourself, away from your technology, away from your phone, and allow you to leave feeling good, refreshed, and recharged. So we've incorporated all of that into Optimize, and then also creating that community where you can connect with other people who are up to good things. That's really important, right? We always hear this: surround yourself with, the people who you surround yourself with are essentially what's the term? It's
Like the top 5 people you surround yourself with is who you're going to basically become, or
yes,
that kind of stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And that's really important. And it's true. I mean, you could just, see where people are spending their energy and time. So the really cool thing about community is that like you're connecting with like-minded people who are up to the same or similar types of things, whether it be professional development, self-development, biohacking, these types of things to help you to stay on track. That's really important, because you could try something a few times and then you could fall off the wagon really quick, but stay on track. Community could really help with that accountability and all those types of things. So I would think that's really important to check that out. If you live outside of the area and that's not possible for you, I would say develop a morning routine, something very simple, something that you can commit to, and start putting it into use. Meaning you set a goal for yourself that you're going to wake up and do XYZ so that you can start to create that healthy routine. So I would say start formulating a healthy routine. Think about your life. Where do you need the most discipline at this point in your life? Is it your eating habits? Is it your like non-physical activity? Are you not getting to the books and reading and learning that you've been telling yourself that you want to do? Oh, I just got this book and that book, but I'm not making enough time to read. Or maybe your sleep's really shitty and you're not unwinding like you should. You're making bad decisions like me by eating late, those types of things. So start to put some energy into working through that little by little. And then you start to see the dividends of that. And then you start to feel good. And then before you know it, it becomes a routine and a habit. But don't try to take on everything all at once, because you might fail and then you'll get back to doing none of it.
Mm-hmm. And make your bed, right?
Make your bed. That's the word. Yeah, I hate making my bed. Honestly, I hate it. It's so annoying. You wake up, you're like, why am I going to make my bed? Like, I'm just going to get back in the bed later. It makes no sense. And so I personally don't like making my bed, but I do it because one, it feels good to get into a made bed at night. Two, it's something I don't want to do and I'm going to do it anyway. And three, I'm starting the day off with a small win.
Yeah. I've been doing it my entire life and it's so deeply ingrained in me. Even if I'm in the hotel room or an Airbnb or wherever I'm at, first thing I do, I just straight away make the bed. It's so unconscious now that it just happens.
Right.
But it's a good habit. All
It's a
right.
good
Well,
habit.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. And if you want to just let everybody know if they have questions for you or if they want to reach out to you or, learn more about Optimize, where should they go?
Yeah, the easiest place, the place I'm most active on is Instagram. I like Instagram mainly just because of the way it works compared to some of the other platforms, although I don't like the censorship. But an easy way to find me is Michael_Roviello. Our facilities are in Tempe and Arcadia, and we are expanding into other parts of the valley and across the country. And you can follow us at Optimize right there. I think you see it. OPTIMYZE_me. And so follow myself and follow Optimize on Instagram and send me a message if you have any questions. I also teach a workshop once a month here in the Valley. It's called the Wim Hof Method Fundamentals course. And it's 5 hours. It's a science theory, practical application of the Wim Hof method. I know you attended a few years ago. And I really like that because not only do we talk about the Wim Hof method, but we just talk about health and mindset and perception and brain waves. And we put it all together where you can take action, immediately. And not only do we understand the things conceptually, but we actually put it into play by doing the breathing, learning how to let go, doing the ice bath, learning how to let go, and also being vulnerable by sharing openly in a group. So there's just a lot of different synergies that are happening in that room, aside from just learning how to do an ice bath. And sometimes people think that's what the class is. And it's much, much, much more than that.
Yeah, definitely. That class was profound for me. So people should definitely check it out. But thank you again for being on the episode.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching the episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure that you like the video and leave a comment and share it with a friend who really needs to hear it. Because when you share this information, you're also going to help other people level up their health. And if you or somebody else you know wants to work on their health and they're looking for a functional medicine practitioner, feel free to reach out to me to apply to work together. Thanks for watching and keep striving to become your healthiest, happiest self.